Today, I want to talk about the legendary tier Italian battleship Colombo and the slight buff it received, as well as one of the newly buffed commander skills in the May 2026 update. But before we get into those details or the details of the battle itself, a little bit of housekeeping, I suppose, for the channel. This match was recorded on Steam. I'm sure you can tell looking at the map here. But I did find a couple of things. Last match I recorded on Steam, if you remember, the mini map was in the bottom, I think, right-hand corner of the screen. I found a setting that lets you put the mini map in its classic location, so we've got it in the same place you'd see it on console. Also found a setting that increases the size of the UI overall. So I think it makes everything larger, but it does make the mini-map crucially a little bit bigger. And of course, you can extend it to even larger size by hitting the F key on Steam. And before you ask in the comments, no, I'm not going to record every battle I play on the Steam platform or switch from console to the PC exclusively. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you I'm going to be streaming this game exclusively on console just because it's a lot easier as far as my setup is concerned. And then when it comes to just playing the game and recording gameplay to get videos, I'm probably going to do that on Steam from time to time just because I enjoy playing the game on PC. And that's the origin of this battle. But for those of you who, for whatever reason, don't like the game played on the Steam platform, it's not going to be literally every video. Anyway, as we go behind the island here after getting a pretty good hit on the Marbara, I'll show you the commander build. It's Azerlane Vittorio Veneto, not quite a full secondary build because in the inspiration slots we've got Kondo and Hipper. Now if you did want a full secondary build to take advantage of the newly buffed secondaries, you'd probably substitute Kondo for somebody like Haruna or maybe Fernandez or one of the other people that buffs the secondary parameters. But the point of this build is to be more of a brawler. And the reason I say that is because in the legendary row, instead of running secondary interest to really fully spec into the secondaries, we're running the newly buffed running with scissors to give the main battery guns a lot more of a punch when we're in close brawling range. And that was sort of my goal in testing this. There are probably some other ships to test out running with scissors, but I think it does benefit Colombo. And the secondaries, in this case, are sort of like a damage amplifier. I think they're pretty good, though, even without Haruna at the helm. And here you can see we're sort of stuck in a situation where we know the enemy DD is right there, so we don't want to pull out too quickly. But you saw the running with scissors skill proc there because he was close enough to do the procking. And that's going to be useful if we ever do get to shoot at him. For the moment, though, a little bit of an impasse. There's a lot of ships out there to the right-hand side of the screen, so we don't want to fully push out, and we didn't know where the torpedoes were going to be. But now that we see them go across the screen, apparently we feel a little bit better pushing out. Although, doesn't SOM have a torpedo reload booster? Maybe this is a bit of a false sense of security. Marbara peeking around the corner there, and we get to hit him pretty hard again with the main battery guns. Now, as for the buff Colombo received, it was fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. The secondary battery firing range was increased from a base of 6.5 kilometers to 7, and then they improved the enhanced secondary targeting consumable by increasing its charges from 3 to 4 base, reducing the cooldown time to 120 seconds, improving the secondary battery sigma by 25%, and then the secondary battery dispersion is likewise reduced by 20% whenever that consumable is active. And I think it does make the secondaries noticeably more active, although they aren't all that, or noticeably more accurate, I mean, although they aren't that accurate without the consumable running and with this build. The only thing we've got spec'd into them is the secondary mod, the Hipper inspiration, and then the porcupine skill. So we've got a range of 10.7 kilometers, although when I was testing the ship with a full secondary build without running with scissors, and I did have Haruna as the second inspiration instead of Kondo, the range was 11.1, so certainly a little bit better. The reload time on the 90mm secondaries is 5.1 seconds, and on the larger 152s, 7.2 seconds. I think they deal quite a bit of good damage, but the Sigma is 1.2. The dispersion numbers are pretty big. The main thing, though, is the running with scissors buff. Now, previously, running with scissors used to come with a downside. It reduced the main battery dispersion by, I want to say, 5%. And that nerf to the accuracy was not ideal, but the benefits that the skill gives you were and remain really valuable. It buffs battleship gun traverse speed by 1.6 degrees per second, and it buffs rudder shift time by 10%. But the special effect, now keep in mind, I have Azurlane Vittorio Veneto fully maxed, rank 16, legendary level 4. So the numbers, if you don't have somebody fully maxed for running with scissors, are going to be lower than this. But the special effect procs within 8 kilometers of an enemy ship, and it increases the battleship's main shell damage by 15%. Not quite as good as, I think, Arthas's 20% increase if you run him. But in order to do that, we'd have to give up the secondary consumable, and we'd have to substitute it for a fighter plane whose only usefulness is Arthas. So I think the newly buffed secondary consumable probably want to keep that on there, but running this kind of hybrid secondary build with running with scissors to really buff the main battery guns and then just treat the secondaries as more of a damage amplifier, I think this is not a bad build for the Colombo. It can be a nice brawler, especially with these smoke screens here. Right now, of course, we've concealed ourselves in one of the smoke screens for as long as we possibly can. There's battleships in the Bravo cap. We don't want to be spotted giving broadside to that area of the map. We want to take out the Marlborough so we know he's not a threat to us. He's demonstrated already that he could be. And of course, Sam is coming here trying to make things complicated, but it's not too difficult to take care of him. Eventually, teammates end up taking care of the Marlborough. We've got 1 kill, I think, on the Somme there, and 2 fists. And now it's a 4v3 in favor of the blue team, although I think it's quickly going to turn into a 3v3. Still in favor of the blue team because we've got our destroyer left alive. He's busy halfway done flipping the Charlie cap, and I think he's going to start heading back in this direction. Meanwhile, Kremlin is tunnel visioned, as far as I can tell, on the friendly battleship directly in front of him, and he's sailing right toward him. You can see the secondaries there. I think the consumable was active. They were doing some good damage. Now that the consumable's not active, the damage will fall off, but Kremlin continues on his merry way. So what are we going to do? Of course, we're going to try to flank him, since he's so focused on those 2 friendly battleships and pushing straight into him. Or them, rather. We go around this island, we continue heading toward the direction of the Bravo cap. We're going to end up with Kremlin's broadside. He's not making much of an effort to angle there. We can lob a shot over the island. Hopefully it'll sink him, but I don't think it does. No, in fact, it's probably the worst shot we're going to take at him. But we are up to 144,000 damage done so far. Respectable number of secondary hits. I do wish, and if Wargaming is keeping track of this video, I'm sure this is already on your backlog list, but if you could make a detailed results screen at the end of the battle, that would show me how much damage the secondaries are doing, so I could, compare the efficacy of them with different builds. That'd be nice. Anyway, last shot there at Kremlin. He's nearly toast now, and we turn our attention to the GK as our teammates finish that guy off. GK is likewise broadside to us, I believe, entering the Bravo cap, pursued by the friendly destroyer, who I hope is not gonna be too reckless and get himself spotted. I guess it is still a 4v2, though, in favor of the blue team, so I don't think whatever happens to that friendly DD is really going to turn the tide for the red team. High caliber metal there with that shot on the GK, 185,000 damage done. And I think GK is going to take himself behind this island as this destroyer, which I believe is a Lucian, hits him with a bunch of torpedoes and sends him back to port. And once again, we get another fist. That is 4 fists in a row. We can get the poor man's Kraken helping hand if we can just damage this last remaining enemy cruiser, which was spotted somewhere in our spawn, apparently, toward the center of the map. So we'll get in the Bravo cap and head in his last known direction, but of course he's closer than we ever could have expected, and he's proccing the running with scissors, so we have that 15% damage buff to the main battery guns. And, well, you can see there that the results aren't spectacular when the accuracy's not great and the dispersion doesn't allow for it. But Napoli, focused by the remainder of the blue team, he's got really no chance. The only question is who is going to sink him. And once again, we see, I suppose, the improved accuracy of the sap secondaries with the consumable active. Seems pretty good, but really, this 15% damage buff, I think, is the most valuable thing in this build. Take out a gun for Napoli, he beaches himself, tries to smoke up, not gonna work, and of course we don't get the kill, but we do get the helping hand. And we end the battle with 215,000 damage done, and 5 fists, along with 1 kill. Only second on the leaderboard, though, following the Lucian, or Lucian as it is probably properly pronounced. I suppose the secondaries, the 200-some hits we got, don't yield a lot of XP, but GG's to that Lucian. Pretty good battle, and the Colombo remains as effective as ever. Although, if you want to take my advice, I'd say try using it with running with scissors, more so than just building fully into the secondaries. You can, of course, do that, but the running with scissors buff, I think, is pretty spicy, and this is certainly a spicy Italian ship. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.